The 90s and 2000s saw a series of massive upgrades in video game tech that we haven't seen since, and maybe never will again. The recent developments in ray tracing, 4K, super sampling, frame interlacing, polygon counts, and high-res textures are all nothing compared to the step changes we had year on year back then, and it was all happening in shooters. We went from Wolfenstein 3D to Doom to Quake to Half-Life in the span of 6 years. I'll say that again. Wolfenstein 3D to Half-Life in 6 years. You want to know what games looked like 6 years ago? Like this. Or is this from a year ago? It's hard to tell. The truth is, graphics upgrades have been nothing more than window dressing for a long time now. The first Half-Life landed in the gaming landscape like an alien artifact. Shooters had been about levels with rooms and corridors forever. And then we suddenly have this single, seamless, real-time journey with story and pacing. You weren't a marine or a soldier, you were a physicist, and you start the game at work. An experiment goes bad, aliens start appearing, you fight your way through a government containment effort, and ultimately travel to the alien dimension to end the invasion. For 1998, this vision and ambition was absolutely ridiculous, and the maniacs at Valve did it anyway. And then they immediately set out to make the sequel. But they just reinvented gaming. How do you follow that up? You have to change the world again or everyone's disappointed. So what do you do? Where do you even start? Well, you work out what the distant future looks like, and then you build that and make it run on current technology. Half-Life 2 didn't push envelopes, it incinerated them in every possible direction, with a suite of R&D technologies that were all individually revolutionary. Fully rigged facial animation with the first human expressions you had ever seen in a game. On that G-Man demo alone you wanted to buy the game, forget game trailers, just to see it run. Water went from a texture to highly convincing distorted reflections. Look at this hallway, how does it look this good? How does it look as good as modern ray-traced hallways? Because they did ray-trace it, then baked in the lighting as a texture. It's lighting from 2023 running on your shitty 90s computer. A real-time physics engine. When I first saw a tire roll on its edge like this, I had a weird sensation of the world warping around me. It could not be real. I tried to think through the calculations being done to make this work, and decided it was impossible. With this physics engine and the gravity gun, Half-Life 2 transcended shooters and became the world's first sandbox. All of this went into a brand new engine. For Half-Life 1, they hacked the shit out of Quake. For Half-Life 2, they built their own. And no engine since has had such a distinct look and feel, and identity, like Source did. This engine is lean, fast, tactile and sharp. It's made of carbon fiber and smells like ozone. And then, with all this technology, they made the game. We've all played it. I don't need to go through it. I don't even know why I'm making this video. You step off a train and then you're just bombarded with gritty, highly considered detail everywhere you look. It's not a Mars base or a research center, it's a public building. And there are no demons. This is a society being brutally oppressed by a strange-looking police force. A face on a big screen is telling everyone to give up sexual reproduction. And then you step outside and your graphics card stutters. This is not a city from the future or the past. It's a rundown, lived-in Eastern European town with this strange, cold, alien architecture infesting its spaces. What a start. What a way to establish a world, a mood, a conflict in 5 minutes. What follows is a masterpiece of constantly evolving gameplay, but what sticks with me is the design. These cars, dripping with that Source engine aesthetic. These wrecked European shitboxes that are somehow cooler than any Lamborghini. The sound design, the slap of the pistol, and the explosions muffled by distance. These gunships. When I took down my first gunship, I pored over the wreckage looking for something, some detail or clue or insight to explain it, but I was left disappointed, as if something was missing. It was dead, that's what was missing. I cannot think of another enemy in a game that feels as sentient as these things still do. All because it's a physics object moving under forces. We'd never seen it before. The more you think about this game, the more you realize that Valve, back then at the turn of the century, We're in a creative space and working in a certain way that's just never been matched again. So what does it mean then to say that 20 years later, after some community modders made this game playable in virtual reality, I think Half-Life 2 is also the best virtual reality game I've ever played? Does it simply make sense? Is it to be expected? As we all know, Valve could not make a Half-Life 3, because Half-Life games have to be dramatic step changes, and there were no more step changes. Half-Life 2 was the end of an era, because there were no more big problems to solve. Until virtual reality. The next Half-Life game could be a virtual reality game, because there was room there for another innovation explosion. It would just have to be the best VR game ever made, of course. So that's what Valve did. Half-Life Alyx is still, uncontroversially, the best virtual reality game you can play. Still, 3 years after release. But Alyx had a specific mandate, to get people into virtual reality. And if you want VR to be comfortable and accessible, you need to put a lot of guardrails in it, like slow movement, like combat that doesn't overwhelm, like jank-free single-handed weapons. Alyx is fantastic, but it's also a little bit like gaming in bubble wrap. And it turns out that Half-Life 2's core gameplay design, which is all about immersion and engaging with your environment, translates perfectly to VR. If you want to know what Alyx would feel like without the guardrails, Half-Life 2 is Alyx Unleashed. Faster movement, bigger open spaces, more enemies, longer fights, exhilarating vehicles, characters you actually share spaces with, and a more epic, varied journey that feels in every way like a modern VR game. Obviously, this is thanks to the great work by the Source VR mod team, but it's also because this game was literally 20 years ahead of its time. That is not a glib platitude anymore. Virtual reality has proven it beyond doubt.